She left everything behind, her family, her friends, the only language she truly knew. All for a dream stitched together by hope and hard work. In this new country, her accent makes her different. Her silence makes her invisible. But when the world begins to fall apart, she's the one standing on the front lines. She holds hands that are trembling with fear. She listens when no one else has time. She wipes away tears, even as her own eyes burn behind the mask. She came as an outsider, but destiny had other plans. This isn't just a story about survival. This is the story of a woman who became a quiet hero when the world needed her most. She arrives in a city where everything moves faster than her heartbeat. The streets are loud, the people are strangers, and the air carries a language she doesn't fully understand. But in her hands, there's strength. In her heart, there's a promise to build a better life, no matter how hard it gets. Nadia left her home country with nothing but a nursing degree, 2 suitcases, and a dream. She stepped off the plane believing that America would be the land of opportunity. But reality greeted her with icy winds, confusing bus routes, and a job that barely covered rent. Her first night in the small apartment was cold and quiet. She sat on the edge of a thin mattress, scrolling through her phone, looking at old family pictures, her mother waving from the airport, her little brother holding a handmade good luck sign. She whispered, "I'll make you proud," before setting an alarm for 4:30 a.m. The next morning, Nadia walked to the hospital where she'd been hired as a night shift nurse. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she entered through the staff entrance, clutching her ID badge like a lifeline. "First day?" a voice asked. A fellow nurse smiled at her, handing her a surgical mask. Nadia nodded nervously. The hallways smelled of disinfectant and coffee. Patients' monitors beeped in rhythm like an unfamiliar song. Her English was good but not perfect. She had learned from textbooks, not from casual conversations. So every interaction required careful listening and extra courage. In the break room, she overheard other nurses laughing together. She wanted to join in, but the jokes slipped past her. She sat alone, pretending to scroll her phone. That first week, she worked like a shadow, unseen but essential. She changed sheets, adjusted IVs, helped patients bathe, and comforted the elderly who called for their families through the night. She rarely spoke unless it was necessary. At the end of each shift, Nadia walked back through the quiet streets just as the sun began to rise. Her feet ached, her uniform smelled like bleach, and her eyes burned from exhaustion. But she smiled softly to herself. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. Weeks turned into months. She became quicker, sharper, learning the rhythms of the hospital like a second language. She sent money back home every week, even when it meant cutting back on her meals. Then, one morning in late February, a news alert flashed on the break room TV. New virus outbreak spreads globally. First U.S. cases confirmed. Some nurses laughed it off. Others looked worried. Nadia didn't know what to feel. She just tightened the straps of her mask and went back to work, unaware that her world was about to change completely. The hospital hallways changed almost overnight. Where there were once quiet whispers, there was now urgency in every step. Posters about hand hygiene were replaced with warnings about a virus that nobody fully understood. Nadia stood by the nurse's station, watching as staff rushed around with clipboards and masks. The break room TV blared news headlines she couldn't fully keep up with, too many medical terms, too much panic. She understood enough to know this was serious. In early March, the first wave of patients began to arrive. People gasping for air. Elderly faces pale and terrified. Hallways that once echoed with routine now filled with the sound of ventilators and alarms. Room 402 needs oxygen now. Call respiratory, we're out of beds. Nadia moved quickly, doing everything she could. Adjusting masks, holding trembling hands, whispering calming words in broken English. Her shifts grew longer. The hospital stopped feeling like a workplace and started feeling like a battlefield. One night, she approached a senior nurse for help with a patient who was deteriorating. "Excuse me, Patient in 305. Breathing bad. She struggled to explain, her accent thickening under stress. The nurse sighed loudly. You need to work on your English, Nadia. We don't have time to guess what you mean. Her face flushed with embarrassment. She nodded and rushed back to the room, heart pounding. She knew exactly what to do medically, but the words kept betraying her. As days turned into weeks, fear crept into every corner of the hospital. Staff stopped eating together. Conversations turned into clipped orders. Some avoided Nadia in the halls, whispering behind masks. She's from overseas. Who knows if she traveled recently? I heard accents are harder for patients to understand. Not ideal right now. She heard them. Every word. But she kept her head down and worked. Her apartment became a place she only visited to sleep. She'd peel off her scrubs by the door, disinfect everything, and stand under scalding water in the shower as if trying to wash the weight off her skin. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from home, her mother asking if she was safe, her little brother sending voice notes. She didn't have the heart to tell them how scared she really was. One night, after a 16-hour shift, she sat alone at a bus stop under a flickering streetlight. Her hands were raw from constant washing. Her mask had left deep marks on her face. Across the street, people clapped from their balconies, part of the nationwide movement to honor healthcare workers. The sound echoed through the empty street. Nadia watched quietly. She wanted to feel proud. But inside, exhaustion swallowed everything. By April, the hospital was overwhelmed. Stretchers lined the hallways. Supplies ran low. Staff members fell sick one by one. Some didn't come back. Nadia volunteered for extra shifts. Not because she wanted to be a hero, but because she didn't have the luxury to say no. She couldn't risk losing this job. One morning, she walked into a room where a patient, an elderly woman, was struggling to breathe. The woman reached out, terrified. Please, don't leave me. Nadia took her hand gently. I stay with you. For hours, she stayed by her side, adjusting tubes, whispering comfort through layers of protective gear. When the woman finally closed her eyes for the last time, Nadia stood silently. No family had been allowed in. No one held her except Nadia. That night, she cried in the hospital bathroom, not loudly, just quiet tears slipping down her tired face. And yet, the next day, she showed up again. Mask on. Hands ready. Heart heavy but steady. By early May, the weight became unbearable. Nadia's eyes had grown used to the sterile white walls and the endless sound of ventilators, but her heart hadn't. Every hallway carried memories of faces she'd held onto until the very end. Every room felt like it was shrinking, closing in on her. One evening, while preparing medication, her supervisor approached her with a clipboard. You've been working too many shifts, she said. We need to cut back your hours. Union rules. Nadia froze. No, please. I need work. I can do more. The supervisor shook her head. We're bringing in temporary staff. We can't give you overtime anymore. I'm sorry. She nodded slowly, but inside, panic grew. Less hours meant less money, and her rent, her bills, her family back home, they depended on every single dollar. That night, she called her mother. I'm okay, she lied. Just tired. Her mother's voice trembled through the line. Nadia, promise me you're resting. We pray for you every night. She wanted to tell her everything, how alone she felt, how heavy the mask had become, how sometimes she stood in the supply closet just to cry for a minute before going back out. But instead, she whispered, I promise, and hung up. The following week, the hospital was hit with its worst surge yet. Rooms overflowed. A new strain had spread through the city. Nadia's phone buzzed with a message from a coworker. 2 nurses in ICU tested positive. One is critical. Her stomach dropped. It was Maya, the first nurse who'd smiled at her on her first day. For days, she watched through the ICU glass as Maya lay hooked to a ventilator. Staff passed by quietly. Some prayed. Some didn't know what to say. Nadia pressed her gloved hand to the glass one night when no one was watching. You told me I'd be okay, she whispered. Now you have to be okay too. But a few mornings later, when she walked into the break room, she knew from the silence what had happened. Maya was gone. She walked out of the hospital without a word, sat on the curb outside. Her mask hung loose around her neck. Her hands shook. She wasn't just tired anymore. She was broken. The next few days blurred into each other. She moved like a ghost, working, showering, sleeping, repeating. She avoided eye contact, avoided laughter, avoided mirrors. She had lost coworkers, patients, and a piece of herself. One evening, after a brutal double shift, Nadia boarded the bus home. A man sitting nearby pointed at her hospital ID badge. "You people brought the virus here," he muttered. She froze. He stood up, anger rising. "Why don't you go back to where you came from? We wouldn't be in this mess if it weren't for foreigners like you." The other passengers stayed silent. Nadia lowered her eyes, gripping the seat as tears burned hot behind her mask. When she reached her apartment, she sat on the floor, still wearing her scrubs. The city outside was quiet, but inside her chest was a storm. For the first time since arriving in America, she questioned everything. Why she came, why she stayed, whether she could keep going. She closed her eyes and whispered in her native language, "I can't do this anymore." But then, the next morning, something unexpected happened. As she entered the hospital, one of the elderly patients she had cared for weeks earlier spotted her from his room. His voice was weak, but his smile was warm. "You're here," he said softly. "Thank you for not giving up on us." For a moment, all the noise in her head quieted. She walked into his room, holding his hand gently. And for the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker, small, fragile, but real. Hope. June brought warmer air, but inside the hospital, the war continued. Yet, something was different. After months of chaos, fear, and exhaustion, small moments began to shine through the cracks. One afternoon, while Nadia was checking a patient's vitals, a woman in her 60s reached for her hand. "You were here last night, weren't you?" the woman asked softly. Nadia nodded. "You stayed with me when I was scared." The woman's eyes welled with tears. "Thank you. I'll never forget that." Nadia smiled behind her mask. No grand speeches, no spotlight, just quiet gratitude. But it was the first time in months that someone truly saw her. Outside the hospital, the city had started something new. Communities began putting up signs on lawns and balconies. "Thank you, healthcare heroes." Murals of masked nurses appeared on building walls. Local restaurants dropped off free meals for hospital staff. One morning, Nadia walked to work and paused in front of a massive mural near the entrance. It showed a nurse in full protective gear holding a patient's hand, surrounded by angel wings. Someone had written in bold letters, "Not all heroes wear capes, some wear scrubs." She didn't say it aloud, but something inside her chest tightened, not with pain this time, but with pride. At work, things began to shift too. One evening, Nadia was helping a patient when she heard footsteps behind her. It was the same senior nurse who had once criticized her English. "Hey," she said quietly. "You've been solid through all this. I just wanted to say, good job." It wasn't dramatic. Just a few words. But to Nadia, it felt like a door opening that had always been closed. Later that week, during a particularly chaotic night, she took charge in a way she never had before. A young nurse froze when a patient's oxygen levels plummeted. Without hesitation, Nadia moved in, issued instructions clearly, and stabilized the situation. The doctor on duty looked at her impressed. "You handled that perfectly." For the first time, no one saw her as the immigrant nurse with an accent. They saw her as a professional. News crews began covering frontline workers across the country. One afternoon, a small local news team came to the hospital to interview staff. Nadia tried to slip away, but the head nurse stopped her. "They want to talk to someone who's been here since the beginning," she said. "That's you." Nadia's heart raced. English interviews weren't her strength. But something inside whispered, "You've made it this far." With shaky hands, she stood in front of the camera. The reporter asked her how it had been. She took a deep breath and spoke slowly, carefully. "It was hard. Very hard. But we never stopped. We take care of people." That is what nurses do. The reporter smiled. Why did you choose to stay through all of this? Nadia's eyes softened. Because when people cannot breathe, they look for someone who will not walk away. I want to be that person. The clip aired that night. Her coworkers watched it during break. For a moment, the break room, usually filled with exhaustion, echoed with soft applause. Nadia lowered her eyes, shy, but inside her heart, something bloomed. The next day, as she walked to her locker, a younger nurse stopped her. I saw your interview, she said. You're amazing. I want to be like you. Nadia didn't know what to say. She simply smiled, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time, belonging. Her journey wasn't over. The virus was still raging. But for the first time, she wasn't invisible anymore. By late summer, the city had changed. Streets that were once empty began to fill with life again. Cafes reopened with outdoor tables, children played in parks wearing tiny colorful masks, and for the first time in months, hope felt real. But inside the hospital, the frontline workers knew the battle wasn't truly over. Nadia had become a quiet anchor in the chaos. Her coworkers relied on her calm presence, her patients trusted her gentle hands, and new nurses looked to her when panic struck. She didn't see herself as a leader, but her actions spoke louder than any title could. One afternoon, as she finished checking a patient's chart, the hospital director approached her. Nadia instinctively straightened, unsure if she'd done something wrong. You've been here every single day since this started, the director said. We've noticed. Nadia hesitated. I just do my work. The director smiled. You do more than that. We're recommending you for the city's Healthcare Hero Recognition Program. It's a small ceremony, a way to honor those who went above and beyond. Nadia's eyes widened. Me? Yes, you, the director replied warmly. You've earned it. She walked away stunned. She had never imagined something like that. Recognition was for people with perfect English, confident speeches, or years of seniority, not for someone like her. But deep down, a small flame of pride flickered. A week later, she received an official letter in the mail. It had the city seal embossed in gold. She traced her finger over her name printed in bold letters, Nadia Rahman, Healthcare Hero Honoree. She held the letter to her chest for a moment, letting the reality sink in. In that tiny apartment that had once felt cold and foreign, something shifted. This wasn't just her place of survival anymore. It was her home. She video called her mother that night. They are giving me something, an award, she said shyly. Her mother gasped. My daughter. I told you. I told you one day they would see you. We are so proud. Her little brother popped into the camera, holding up a handmade sign that said Hero in colorful letters. Nadia laughed through tears. The day of the ceremony arrived. It was held outdoors in front of City Hall, under a clear blue sky. Rows of folding chairs were set up, carefully spaced apart. Reporters lined the edges, cameras ready. Dozens of healthcare workers stood wearing their scrubs and masks, some holding hands, some wiping away tears. Nadia sat quietly in the back row, nervously adjusting the edge of her headscarf under her cap. She wasn't used to attention. She preferred the shadows of hospital hallways to stages. When her name was called, the crowd erupted into applause. She froze for a second, then slowly walked to the stage, her shoes clicking against the wooden platform. The mayor handed her a framed certificate and a metal ribbon. Nadia Rahman, he said into the microphone, has worked tirelessly since the earliest days of the pandemic. She stood by patients when no one else could. Her courage, kindness, and dedication embody the very best of us. Flashes from cameras blinded her momentarily. She bowed her head slightly, accepting the medal with both hands. She didn't prepare a speech, but the mayor offered her the microphone. She hesitated. Her English wasn't perfect. Her heart pounded. But then she remembered that night months ago, when she had whispered to herself that she couldn't go on. She lifted the microphone slowly. I came here with a dream, she began. Her voice trembled, but grew steadier with each word. I wanted to help. When the world was afraid, I was afraid too. But I stayed. Because when people cannot breathe, they need someone to hold their hand. I am grateful to be that person. The crowd rose to their feet, clapping loudly. Her coworkers cheered from the back, some whistling playfully. Nadia lowered the microphone, overwhelmed. In that moment, the girl who once sat alone in the break room pretending to scroll her phone was gone. Standing in her place was someone stronger, someone seen. After the ceremony, news outlets picked up her story. A short video clip of her speech spread online. People commented from across the country, "She's a true hero. Accents don't matter. Hearts do. This is what America is about." Nadia scrolled through the messages in disbelief. Strangers were sending her letters through the hospital, thanking her for her service. A local bakery delivered cupcakes with a handwritten note, "For our favorite nurse, thank you for your courage." She wasn't used to praise. It felt strange, almost unreal. But it warmed her in a way she hadn't expected. Meanwhile, the hospital administration began to take notice too. Nadia was offered a permanent full-time contract with benefits, something she'd been working toward since the day she arrived. She no longer had to fight for overtime or fear losing shifts. She had stability now. She moved out of her cramped apartment into a modest one-bedroom closer to the hospital. It wasn't fancy, but it had sunlight streaming through the windows in the morning and a small balcony where she placed a potted plant from her mother's hometown. Each morning, she stood on that balcony with a cup of tea, breathing in the quiet before heading to the hospital. She thought about everything she had endured, the fear, the loneliness, the loss. And she thought about Maya, the coworker she had lost. She whispered a silent thank you to her memory. The pandemic wasn't over, but Nadia had changed. She was no longer the newcomer struggling to be understood. She was the nurse people turned to for guidance. She mentored younger staff, taught them techniques, and reminded them gently to take breaks and eat. One night, a new nurse panicked when a patient's condition suddenly worsened. Nadia stepped in with calm precision, giving instructions clearly. The situation stabilized. Afterward, the young nurse approached her, shaking. "I don't know how you stayed so calm," she said. Nadia smiled softly. "Because I have been there. Many times. You breathe, then you help them breathe. That is how we do it." The young nurse nodded, visibly inspired. As months passed, government relief programs expanded. Frontline healthcare workers were given bonuses, mental health resources, and public transportation passes. Nadia received a small financial grant, which she used to enroll in an advanced nursing program. Her dream of becoming a specialized nurse, something she thought she'd left behind, started to feel possible again. On weekends, she joined online classes from her new apartment. Her English had improved drastically. She could now hold conversations easily, make jokes, even explain medical terms with confidence. During one virtual lecture, the professor asked students to share why they chose to pursue advanced practice. Nadia unmuted her mic and spoke slowly. "I came here to work, but I stayed to serve. Because this place, these people, they became my family." Her classmates clapped. In the fall, the hospital organized a memorial event for those lost during the height of the pandemic. Photos of patients and healthcare workers lined the garden outside. Candles flickered softly in the breeze. Nadia stood near Maya's picture, her hands clasped. She whispered, "You were the first one who smiled at me. I hope I made you proud." She placed a white flower at the base of the photo and stepped back. Around her, coworkers hugged, cried, and remembered. It wasn't just sorrow, it was healing. As the evening ended, Nadia walked through the city streets. They were alive again, but different, softer somehow. People nodded to her as she passed in her scrubs, some recognizing her from the news clip, some just offering silent gratitude. A child tugged at his mother's hand and pointed. "Mom, look. It's the nurse from TV." Nadia laughed shyly, waving back. She reached the bus stop where months ago she had once sat in tears, feeling invisible. Now she stood a little taller. The night air was cool against her skin, but inside, she carried warmth. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, belonging, becoming. Winter came quietly that year. Snow blanketed the city in soft white, muffling the usual noise. The hospital windows glowed like lanterns against the dark sky. Nadia stood at the staff lounge window, watching the snow fall in slow spirals. She wrapped her hands around a cup of tea, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. It had been 2 years since the world first changed. 2 years since she'd sat in this very building, afraid and unsure of where she belonged. Now, everything felt different, not because the world had magically fixed itself, but because she had. She glanced around the lounge. New nurses chatted cheerfully near the vending machine. A few staff members she'd trained were joking in the corner. Someone was playing soft music on a portable speaker. There was light here again. A young nurse approached her nervously. "Miss Nadia? Can you check this for me?" She looked over the chart, then smiled. "You did it right," she said gently. "Trust yourself." The young nurse exhaled in relief. "I'm still learning." "So am I," Nadia replied with a knowing smile. "We all are." On her day off, she walked through the city wrapped in a thick scarf. The air was crisp, the streets decorated with twinkling holiday lights. Storefronts displayed warm sweaters, ornaments, and signs that read "Together Stronger." She passed a small park where a food drive was taking place. Volunteers handed out warm meals to people in need. Nadia paused for a moment, watching. She remembered those early days, counting every dollar, choosing between bills and groceries, crying silently on the bus. A woman working at the food stand caught her eye and waved. "Hey, aren't you the nurse from the ceremony?" Nadia blushed. "Yes, that was me. Come help us," the woman said with a smile. "We could use someone with your energy." Nadia rolled up her sleeves without hesitation. She handed out meals, greeted strangers, and listened to their stories. Some were immigrants like her, fighting their own invisible battles. Others were locals who had lost everything during the pandemic. She recognized the same tired eyes she once had and offered the same kind of quiet kindness she had once craved. For hours, she worked alongside the volunteers, feeling an unexpected sense of belonging. Not as a guest in this country, not as someone surviving, but as part of its heartbeat. As the new year approached, Nadia received her nursing specialization certificate. Her professors praised her dedication. Her hospital offered her a leadership position in a new training program for incoming nurses. She stood in front of the class on the first day, rows of fresh faces, some confident, some scared. She took a deep breath and began, "My name is Nadia Rahman. I came here with a dream, and I stayed with a purpose. You are not alone in this journey. I was once sitting where you are now. So, let's begin." Her voice didn't tremble this time. At home, life had changed too. Her new apartment felt alive. She'd hung up family photos on the wall, placed books and candles on shelves, and even adopted a small orange cat that followed her everywhere. Every evening, she video called her family back home. Her mother's eyes always shone with pride. Her little brother had grown taller, more confident. "One day, I'll come study there too," he'd say. "You will," she replied. "And I'll be here waiting." One cold evening, she found herself riding the same bus route she'd once taken as a terrified newcomer. She sat by the window, watching the city lights pass by like golden streaks. The same streets, the same seats, but she wasn't the same. She thought about the nights she had doubted herself, the days when exhaustion almost broke her. She thought about Maya, about the patients who had held her hand, about the applause on stage, the strangers who had called her a hero. Tears welled in her eyes, not from pain, but from gratitude. She whispered softly, "We made it." Spring brought new beginnings. The city bloomed again, trees bursting into color. Nadia led her first independent team during a major vaccination drive. She coordinated logistics, comforted patients afraid of needles, cracked small jokes in broken but warm English. Her team worked efficiently under her guidance. At the end of the drive, the city health commissioner approached her. "You've done incredible work. You know, when we talk about the heart of the city's recovery, we talk about people like you." She didn't quite know how to respond. She simply smiled, her eyes shining. One afternoon, after a long shift, Nadia sat on her balcony sipping tea. The plant her mother had sent was thriving, its leaves stretching toward the sun. She watched children playing below, couples laughing as they passed, delivery riders rushing by, everyday life, messy and beautiful. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. When she arrived, she had felt like a stranger in a loud, unfamiliar world. But now the noise was music. Her story didn't end with medals or newspaper articles. It continued in the quiet moments, in the way she guided a trembling new nurse, in the laughter of patients who felt safe in her care, in the warmth she shared with strangers. She wasn't searching for recognition anymore. She had found something far more powerful: purpose, belonging, and peace. Years later, a young nursing student entered the hospital for her first day. She was nervous, clutching her bag tightly. Nadia, now a senior trainer, noticed her hesitation and walked over. "First day?" she asked kindly. The girl nodded. Nadia handed her a cup of water and smiled. "I know that feeling. Come on, you're not alone." The girl followed her down the hallway. Nadia's steps were steady, confident, filled with the quiet strength of someone who had walked through fire and emerged shining. The hospital buzzed with life around them. Machines beeped, doctors called out instructions, patients laughed softly in their rooms. It was chaotic, but Nadia moved through it like a calm current, guiding others along. And somewhere in the busy corridors, in the rhythm of footsteps and heartbeats, her journey continued, not as a story of struggle anymore, but as a legacy. Snow, spring, summer, and fall would come and go. New faces would arrive, old ones would leave. But the mark she had left would stay in the lives she touched, the hands she held, the courage she shared without even realizing. She didn't just survive in a foreign land. She became part of its story.